Hello. Welcome to the Armchair Expert. I'm Dax Shepard. I'm joined by the ever-talented and beautiful Monica Padman.
Hello. What an intro.
I've got more coming your way. Yeah, I've just started drafting them in my head.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
I don't think I'll run out of adjectives too soon either.
Okay.
Yeah. Before we get into this week's episode, there was some blowback, and I'm happy there was blowback.
Me too.
About the lack of a fact check on
Mr. Joel McHale.
On the beefy Joel McHale's episode. The reason for that was my beautiful, lovely stepfather of 8 years, David Barton, had been battling prostate cancer, and I had to go to Oregon for a week, and he has since passed, and I was there with my family, and it was both a hard week and a beautiful week because my family's so fantastic. But because of that, I dropped the ball, guys. I was unable to get the fact check in the right spot at the right time.
I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you take credit for this going poorly.
I think so.
No.
Because we would have gotten together much earlier to record those spots,
Yes.
and we would have discovered this, and we would have figured it out and or recorded a new one.
You're right. It prevented us from being able to fix the problem, but you didn't cause the problem. It had nothing to do with
Well, because we had
problem.
recorded the fact
We
check.
had recorded it. It
Yeah.
exists in the ether.
Yeah.
But it's lost.
It is
And
lost.
one day we'll find it and we're going to post it.
Yeah, or we'll re-record it because really
I have all the notes.
we just love doing that fact check. Guys, it's so much fun. So that is the explanation that we owed all of you, and some of it's my fault, according to Monica. It's not all my fault, although I do proceed through life thinking everything's my fault.
It's not true.
But with all that said, we have an amazing guest today. He's a titan in the podcast world.
The titan, I would say.
Yeah, he's the Howard Stern of podcasts. He really started the whole revolution. I mean, who else has interviewed the damn president?
So jealous.
We're so jealous. So you probably already know who that is with those clues. That's another thing we're going to start doing is giving you lots of clues
little
to figure out.
droppings.
So breadcrumbs to find your way. So Marc Maron is our esteemed guest, and I think you'll get a bang out of what it took to get him here and what he and I went through emotionally to make this happen. And I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed talking to Marc Maron, host of WTF Podcast.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
All going to explode one day.
Yeah.
Looks like exploding in the lot next door there. In the house there.
Yes. So Marc is pointing out that we are in the ground zero of a construction project motivated by my wife.
Oh, and by the way, like when I texted you, I never text people what I texted you. This is one of those things that just completely backfired. I've had hundreds of people on my show,
Yeah.
and I never assume familiarity
Uh-huh.
enough to even text people for anything. But like I went to the SAG Awards, and Kristen hosted, and
Yes.
she made a joke about me, and I realized she's never been on the show. Why is it? I've had Dax on a couple of times.
Yeah.
I think me and Dax are good enough.
Yeah.
I'll shoot him a text.
Absolutely.
So I shoot you a text, and you're like, oh, well, isn't this a little awkward that you completely blew me off? And I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, let's unpack this whole thing because you should first know that my most hated fucking thing in life is putting people out to a fault, right? I will not ask for help. This is a big problem of mine.
Right.
It prevented me from getting sober for a long time. I
Right.
just can't receive help, right?
Yeah.
So for me to ask you to do the podcast,
Right.
I know that you probably get asked nonstop. I also know that you're a fucking lead of a TV show. I know you have your own podcast. So for me to send you the initial email saying I would love for you to do my podcast,
Third lead on a TV show. But okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
We'll just
Okay.
say for
Okay.
those who
Sure.
aren't listening, it's
Yeah.
Marc Maron presents Glow.
yeah.
So I'm already feeling vulnerable sending you that email,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So then you don't respond, right? And I never veer into like resentment at you. I just go, of course, he's very busy and he didn't. But then, yes, a few nights ago, you text me, hey, I'd love to have your wife on the podcast. Do you think that could happen? And then I'm not totally proud of what I said to you. But also, I admit it could have been much worse. Like I genuinely like you, and I think we have a bond because we're sober.
Right.
So I gotta act, semi-professionally. So I say, this is interesting that you would ask me to get my wife on your show and you ignored my request.
Right.
So it was pretty bratty. It was definitely teed up for you to be a fucking asshole. I was half expecting you to fire back like, well, you know what? Fuck you, blah, blah, blah. And instead, you blew my fucking mind to the point where I screen captured it and sent it to Monica and said, can you believe how this human being operates? It's totally impressive.
What are you talking about?
Immediately go, holy shit, I'm so sorry. I get really busy. I probably forgot you sent that to me. And now I'm an asshole and I'm sorry. Is there a way to make this right? Like straight into solution.
Yeah, you didn't get defensive, which
No.
it was ripe for getting defensive.
Well, I didn't know where he was at either. Like, I'm like when I sent that one, and like even though it was like 5 minutes between it, I'm like, he's just losing it. He's like, fuck this guy.
Well, I'm just saying that there was about a 95% chance that entire exchange would go really wrong.
Right.
And I give you the credit for it staying very peaceful and nice.
Well, I had been acknowledging that part of myself recently. Like, I answer emails in my head in the moment, or I go like, I'll get back to that. They just go away.
Right. Of course.
It happens a lot, even with texts. Like, I'll get a text and I'll be like, oh yeah, okay. And then I won't even text back. And I miss appointments. They're like, I'm on my way somewhere and they're like, are you coming? And I'm like, oh, I didn't send that text. I just thought but it was like, I'd been feeling bad about doing that because after a certain point, you think you're going to revisit something and just you don't.
Sure.
And you forget.
More shit gets heaped on the pile.
Right.
And you don't get to
And
it.
I felt bad because like I like you and and then there was other issues like I didn't know like what the deal was with you and her, and I'm like, oh Christ. But the whole point about it was like I never do that. And I even asked my producer, I'm like, I think I'm just going to, text Dax and see if we could do it, at least find out if there's interest that way. Like I checked through someone else if I should text, someone who's been on the show.
So
some people are my friends, but, I don't know you that way.
don't you think it has something to do with the sobriety bond? Because I feel
Yeah,
like
but
that puts us on a
definitely
like a different level.
You would think we would behave soberly, but I don't.
Yeah.
But I don't know you that well either.
Right,
Like,
we don't know each other that well.
I know a lot of sober people that are fucking out of their minds.
I know a few as well.
And
I've worked with people where I was like, wow, man, 20 years of sobriety and you're still a fucking asshole to everyone around you. That's crazy. Then you got to assume they must have been much, much worse.
Maybe. I mean, people sometimes get dry and they actually are worse than when they were drinking. But I knew eventually, hopefully, that some amends would happen, but it could have been months. I mean, who the hell knows?
No.
You might have acted soberly eventually.
Yes.
And I might have eventually.
Do you think this is going to deter you from ever texting anyone ever again asking for a favor? I really hope it doesn't.
No, it doesn't, because it wasn't even a favor. It was sort of like, hey, is she laying right there? Could you ask her that kind of?
She was, yeah. So you were right to assume that because we both sleep in the marital bed.
But then you were like, this fucking guy.
Well, again, I'm giving myself like a C on the whole thing because there was another version of the text that was much more aggressive.
Did you ask her? Were you checking?
No. I know when I don't want her input.
Right.
Like it would have been wise to let her in on it all because she always pulls me back about 30%.
Yeah.
But all in all, there was a much meaner text response I had composed in my head, and then there was a much nicer one that I composed, and I kind of just went down the middle. And then again, you were a mensch.
I took the bait to, like, it was the middle.
This is up to you.
Yeah.
You want to make this good or you want to make this worse? Because we can go either direct.
Way.
Yeah. And we're both up for that too, I assume, right? We wouldn't mind grenading.
I wasn't, because I was deferring to you because I felt inappropriate to begin with. So like I was more upset that I let that slip through the cracks.
Had I not emailed you a month before, it wouldn't have bothered me at all.
Right.
But that's not to say that it wouldn't have bothered me in the past. I just like anything else, I'm
keeping things separate.
I'm up and down on whether I'm annoyed by that or feel used by that or don't care.
Well, that was the other thing that I was realizing, because I think the entire evening of when I was actually texting, I was driving with my a guy who was on my show, comedian, Dave Anthony. I don't know if you know him.
I don't know Dave.
He's a funny guy.
Uh-huh.
And I was doing spots at the Comedy Store, when this was like in progress.
Okay.
And like, I think when I got the first text from you, we were driving and I'm like, I got to pull over and deal with this.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
This is I'm gonna feel worse and worse and worse.
No.
Again, you really nailed the response. It was so benevolent.
I
It was
pulled
crazy.
over. I had to pull over to do it. I rarely pull over in text, so I wanted to make sure I got it right.
Wow.
Right. And there was, I think, at one point there was a big gap in the correspondence.
Yeah,
because
you did. You wait till the next day.
No, it was that night. What had happened was, I think you sent me a text, but we had gone to dinner and we were watching the final episode of Peaky Blinders. So I didn't look at my phone for about 3 hours. So it probably looked like I was icing you out on that first request.
Yeah.
So you maybe have already had filled in a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, a lot of stuff. You know where that ended in my head?
Where?
Fuck that guy. You know what I mean? It's like, who the fuck? What do I give a shit? You know what I mean? It's like I fucked up. So what's it going to make me pay for it? I'm not.
Yeah, because you're right. In fact, if I had to pick my what outcome, the last on my list would be you just fucking ignore me. That would send me into.
I wouldn't do that to you.
Right, and nor would I do it to you. I just was in a unique
But no,
situation
I
of watching.
really didn't remember. And then when I looked it up, I was like, it was just a one sentence, and I had no recollection of it. Yeah. When I read it, I realized I had read it before, and maybe I'd said I get back to him, and then it just went away.
Yeah. So
I'm glad it wasn't months ago.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. In fact, I sent 3. Monica was like, "You just got to fucking man up and ask your friends."
I did. When I started mine, I asked people's friends of friends, and a lot of the people that I was dealing with were comics, and they were not. Big shots in any way. Like when I got Conan on, that was a big deal. Right. How am I going to do that?
And did you feel bad asking?
Well, no, I felt bad in the sense that I felt like for that whole first year or so that most people were like, "Oh, Mark's in trouble. He's doing this project," because no one even knew what a podcast was.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is I kind of compare this to. When I was on Punk'd versus when other people were on Punk'd. So when I was on Punk'd, the show had never aired. So I would, put these people in a situation where they were usually scared.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I'd go, just joking, you got punked. Oh, by the way, Punk's a show that'll air in about 6 months on MTV. Here's the premise. There was it was bad news followed by a long explanation that made no sense to them. Whereas at least the people after me got to say you got punked and they were relieved.
Right.
So similarly, you're doing a podcast in 2009. No one even knows what the fuck that is.
Yeah. And I really felt that but see, the benefit of that is I was pretty humbled and sort of I had no choice. So it wasn't, I had to make this work and I had to suck it up and just eat my pride because there was not much going on for me. This was it. And
but am I right in that you were on Air America, right? And you had a few different shows on Air America, and then
but that's not very glorious. In its first incarnation, I was there at the beginning, and I'd never done radio before, and I was out here. I got married. I got the job. Nothing was going on out here. I'd gone through a deal with a couple of scripts with somebody. So I went back I had an apartment in New York, and I started doing radio for the first time in my life at 6 a.m, liberal talk radio. And I was, a reactionary person. I'm not a real political thinker. So I showed up at Air America with a Democracy for Dummies book. I needed to learn, but I was the funny guy. I was supposed to be the funny guy.
yes.
But then after
And you were doing sketches and stuff.
a lot.
Right?
We did a lot of stuff with a lot of writers. It was great comedy.
Right.
But eventually I became the driver of the show. I was the guy. And I had a lot of very smart people around me to inform me. But I had to learn how to read the news, keep up with the narratives, how the Senate works. Why should I like this guy, not this guy?
Yeah.
What did this guy do? There are dudes that do that all day long. So
were you pressured to join? Were you free to have your own take on it?
Of course, it was better off. Yeah, it was better off I had my own take on it. But what I found as time went on, though, that if you're doing that stuff every day, that it will become sort of unavoidable that you are carrying water for somebody in the sense that, if you are progressive, there's the umbrella to that. This is what you believe.
Yeah.
If you're way left, this is what you believe. If you're a centrist Democrat, this is what you trim things off. You got the way left. Who was sort of there's no other way than to, be completely socialist and stop using machinery.
Yeah. Yes.
And then you kind of pull back from there. But you do find that you're servicing a narrative. So, and that sort of started to bum me out. But I was there for a year and a half or year and 6 months. Then the CEO, a new guy, came in and cut us out.
You're 20 years sober next year, yeah? Assuming you
19.
don't fuck up.
Isn't it 19?
Well, in August it's 19, and then next year it'll be 20.
Right. This August it's 19.
I mean,
yeah.
we're really ahead of ourselves, and you're not supposed to do that. But
No, but
suffice
like-
to say, that's a fuckload of time. So,
It is. No,
yeah.
I was sober.
So you were sober.
I was
during this.
sober and married, and I was getting up at 2:33 in the morning
Uh-huh.
because I had to get up to speed on the news. I had to get to the office by like 3 or so because we had to crunch a lot of shit.
This is
we
the
were,
opposite schedule of a stand-up.
right. I mean, I would drink like 2 large Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Oh, yeah.
and I'd eat bags of M&Ms. So I was jacked out of my mind.
Yeah.
But
how
like,
do you
it's
feel
exhausted.
around noon in those days?
No, you're fucked. I mean,
You're done,
because
right?
because you do the show 6 to 9, and by 10 I'm heading home, and you're just like doing basic shit like going shopping. Then you basically you feel like you have the flu all the time.
Yeah.
Or like you like.
And when are you going to bed? 5 p.m. or
No, I would. If I didn't get to bed by 8:30 or so, I'd panic.
Yes. Oh, I hate that.
And then I do comedy on weekends, so I was always all fucked up. And then like I would get up in the morning, like
you were
I
probably
would
a
get
joy
up.
to live with at that period.
No one was living with me. I
Oh,
was
I
at
thought
my
you were saying you were
apartment.
married.
I was. She was out here at the new house, and I was ruining our marriage from across the country.
Oh, okay.
Calling her
Okay.
up when I got to work at 3 a.m. my time, midnight here. Like, where the fuck were you? What's going on? What's
boy, yeah.
So that was bad. This is all sober.
Wait, that's
buddy.
not how one
That's all
maintains
sober.
a long distance relationship. and
No, dude, I
grill them on their whereabouts at
blew it.
midnight. Yeah.
But anyways, so the new guy comes in, Goldberg, and he runs me out. It was right after Stern had left terrestrial. But so we get fired. That's what happened.
The whole gang.
Oddly, I don't like giving Danny Goldberg any credit at all because he really fucked me, and I don't mind saying that.
Yeah.
It's a resentment that might not go away.
Sure.
I'm willing to have a
yeah,
couple.
Yeah. I agree.
He did give Rachel Maddow the prime morning spot. Yeah, Mark Riley, my partner, do
Oh,
a
that's
couple
where she
hours.
came from, is Air America?
Yeah, she was
I didn't know
hired
that.
as a newsreader
Oh.
at Air America and then became the third on a show. And then when I was fired, she got her own 2-hour chunk of the morning. And she was great. I mean,
Yeah.
she's still great. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I have cable is to watch her.
Right.
But so I got pushed out. I came back here, continued the bad, the marriage going badly. But here was the fucked up thing. There was a faction within Air America that wanted to keep me around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was fighting factions.
Yeah.
So they come out here and set me up with my own show on KTLK.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a 10 o'clock at night show and it's got to go live. And the station manager there hates me. Put me on in Siberia, a 10 o'clock live show that was contractually obligated to the women's basketball and
WNBA.
well, whatever the team is here.
Oh, yeah.
There was them, and then there was the Clippers too, right? Is that the women's?
No. The Clippers is the male. We have the Clippers and the Lakers and the men's. And then
Right.
I can't remember the LA.
Either way, it was like, if that game ran long, we were sitting there waiting.
Yes. Now, what seems it seems hard for me to imagine, knowing your personality a bit, is that you basically were fired and rehired by that organization 4 times, right?
Fired, and then I got fired. Then they put me on the evening show. Yeah, and then it was a third time. I think it was only 3 times.
And you were able in all those times to go like, because I have to imagine your initial response is, fuck you, you fired me. But then you were able to talk yourself off that.
Like, I knew the old rich guys, but now that thing was like, had gone through so much garbage, and after I left, but now there's a new rich guy. He's going to bring it back, and I'm like, the last thing I really want to do is get back on, is work for them at all.
Right.
But Carl's idea is we do a streaming video show. That's the thing now. Streaming video, be like the Daily Show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm barely functioning. My wife left me. I'm emotionally incapacitated.
Yeah.
Comedically, I'm just like on stage, yelling and crying. And I didn't think I was capable of doing anything, but I needed the money to stop her.
To keep your house.
To stop her.
Oh, because you needed a lawyer.
No, I had a lawyer, but I was the one with the money, and her lawyer was killing me for nothing.
Yes.
Just out of spite.
Sure.
Because she thought she deserved the house, and it was in my name, and whatever. That whole thing, it's weird when you start talking about it, how quickly those feelings come back.
Right.
And she
your heart rate changes.
Yeah, she hates me, and she just wants to be done with it. I don't need to talk about her anymore. But the deal was, Air America, there's a new rich guy. I got a guy who's going to sponsor me. He says, come out, we'll do a streaming video. It'll be funny, like a Daily Show on the computer. And I'm like, I'm going to need this amount of money up front so I can pay her to stop this shit.
Yeah.
And then I need this amount of money to do the job. And they did it. They're all still up there. Break Room Live. We decided, this guy had this idea. We'd build a studio. We'd be in the studio. We were like, no, it needs to be in the break room. So we're literally in the break room at Air America.
People are like coming to get lunch and stuff,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. And they're paying me like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're in the break room. And we knew the days were numbered.
Yeah.
It just.
But do you think because there was a web element to that, that's why you were comfortable doing the podcast? Is that you saw that as like a viable?
No one watched we were way ahead of the curve on streaming video. No one gave a shit. YouTube wasn't what it was.
Right.
We would stream it live, and we'd get like, if we had 1,000 viewers, we were like, we're killing.
Right.
No one gave a shit.
I wasn't watching a thing on the internet in 2009.
Of course not.
No, I don't.
That
even
was
think
2007.
2008. Yeah, no way.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
So what happened really was that once they finished that, once they said we ain't got no more money, it was a relief. Brendan McDonald, who is my business partner and producer of WTF, was one of the young producers on the original Air America. He's been with me that long.
Really?
Since 2004, that guy.
Yeah.
Like all the way through. Like I won't do anything without that guy.
Right.
He's a genius.
I have people
Nice.
like that in my life.
Yeah.
Monica being one of them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did it make you more political doing that or less or
No, what really transcended for me and what happened on the original Air America is when I talked about my life, my cats, my weird struggles, those were the segments that resonated, that people were like writing in saying like, that was a great story. Yeah. So like I started to realize doing the morning show that this was a good format for me. That like, not everybody can translate into this. Anyone can talk on a mic, but what makes people listen, who knows what that is.
Yeah.
But if I lock in, I can do that.
Yes.
So that was a gift. That was something I got from Air America, a talent that I didn't realize I had and that I really liked. Yeah. And once you learn how to handle a mic on your own, just sitting by yourself, that's a very transcendent thing. It's like finally getting the third ball up in the air when you tried learning how to juggle. You're like, I can do this.
Yes. Your preambles on your podcasts, I feel like, are like doing stand-up with no audience.
Yeah, not necessarily funny.
You just have to have this tremendous conviction that what you're saying someone will find valuable.
Also, you just have to be in it. That's the weird thing because I don't outline it really. You have to be able to sit by yourself and talk to them.
Right. Yeah.
Like, because that's the weirdest thing. I was terrified of that. Like, if I had to fill
your
in,
technique, do you basically just let us hear the other voice in your head? Do you have a conversation with yourself? Is that how you would describe it?
I just sort of start on the topic and hopefully it goes somewhere. Like it's more of an improvisational thing, like where you're hoping something will click. It's like thinking out loud more than having a conversation.
Can you feel it viscerally when you're like, ooh, I'm in a sweet spot right now?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Now, let me
ask, I think I actually will say that or laugh at myself.
Do you get is it annoying at all that there are so many podcasts now? No, because you're such.
I don't know.
One of the original.
There was a time like
sure
at the beginning.
Waves, yeah.
Well, like to get back to what happened was, so I got fired. I'll get you where you want to go. I got fired. I get fired. So then we were there. I was in New York. Yeah. My divorce was pretty much over, and they didn't kick us out of the building. So I said to Brendan, I said, look, there are these guys doing these things. Can we figure it out? There was only
who had you heard?
I hadn't heard anybody. I just knew they were doing it. I knew Corolla did it, but he came from radio. So that seemed like but there were guys that were doing specifically podcasts. Kevin Smith, Jimmy Pardo, Jimmy Dore. Like not many, but they were guys I kind of knew. Yeah. They were guys in my game. There were a lot of podcasts around.
Really quick, I just love that you said, I'll get you where you want.
He's a pro. He knows what to do.
That was really funny. Young buck, settle down. Let's walk down and fuck all the sheep. We don't need to run down and fuck one.
No, but okay. So Brendan figured it out, and Apple at that time was like wanting people with some profile or some ability, because ultimately then, and maybe even now, Apple's main reason to have podcasts was for their equipment. They weren't providing a server. It was
Right.
just a portal. So anything that would make people use iPods more,
Yeah.
that was what it was for. It was really about the equipment.
Right.
Right. It was really like,
they couldn't sell you something that there was nothing to do on it.
that's right.
They couldn't
music
sell you a
was
video
good.
game console.
I don't
no
think
games.
they knew what was going to happen with podcasts,
Right.
but certainly when we started up, I was very anti, social media. I didn't like Facebook. I still don't.
Right.
Twitter was, sort of nascent, and I was like, all right, I'll get on. But like I knew enough to know that in order to get people to listen, I had to call on my friends who people liked.
Yeah.
They didn't really know me. I think a lot of I made a commitment to not do politics in the podcast really at all. I remember being very excited when we had 1,500 downloads. But the first 12 or so shows you can hear, we didn't know what it was. WTF was this blanket idea that we were doing radio style segments. The interviews were shorter. I would have 2 interviews a day, maybe a phone interview. I had a guy in there sometimes, Matthew, to talk about movies. So we were trying to feel out what we wanted the show to be.
Yes.
And I tried to set up a studio. I had these mics on those little tabletop stands.
Yeah, right.
And I'd have people, and it was in my garage was not set up as a studio. There was a table, and there was still shit in it, like garage shit. But like it was just my garbage. And I had a MacBook. I didn't have a mixer, I don't think. Like I would do a longer interview, longer monologue, and then there was a third segment that was usually we played as sort of a Kaufman-esque fake guesting. People didn't know if it was real or not.
Yeah.
So I'd get improv actors.
Right.
Matt Walsh, Jerry Minor. There was a guy named David Waterman that used to do them. Paul Shear's wife, June. Yeah, she was did one with Matt. They were great.
Yeah.
And I love doing them because people did not know
Right.
like if it was real or not. Eventually it just evolves away from that third act. And it became conversations because I was having these conversations with people I knew, apologizing, trying to integrate myself back into the community, because I'm newly, I'm free of the divorce. I'm strapped.
Yeah.
My comedy career is nowhere, nothing is anywhere.
Yes.
So the podcast is all I have. Really, I'm doing stand up, but I couldn't sell tickets or nothing.
Right.
I always had some amount of people respecting me and I could get work.
Can I ask you though, really quick, what were you basing, were you getting any kind of metrics on why the third act was the one to dump, or you were just going from what you felt was working?
Look,
did you have any data to tell you, what people
Other than
stopped
downloads?
listening?
No. We didn't know. It just became a difficult.
You could just tell.
It came tricky to book. Basically, you're making it available to be. You're being pitched by improv people. Like what do you got? Do you got anything? You're calling up these improvisers saying, "You got anything you want to do on the radio?" The guy David Waterman, I don't know. He would do like these characters that there was like 2 or 3 of them on the early shows that are just nuts. Like he played a guy who smoked that salvia stuff. Is that what it's called? Salvia or
Sativa?
No.
Stevia?
No.
It was
What's the stuff
sweetener?
that stuff that gives you a quick, massive?
I know what you're talking about. There was
hallucination?
videos of people who would
Yeah.
do it and they would jump out a window or something.
Right. Well,
Or
they'd have massive hallucinations.
huge hallucinations.
Well, we did that on the air, but it wasn't real.
Right.
But people would be like, "Is that real?" And he did this other thing of this guy who tracked me down from elementary school on Facebook, who I hadn't seen, and he turned out to be a sociopath. It was pretty deep.
And
stuff.
these are all archived. They're all available.
Yeah.
They didn't disappear. None of these disappeared, right?
No, the archive, the most recent 50 are always free. They're free for 6 months.
Okay.
And then they go behind the paywall, which is howl.fm to house the archives.
Oh,
So they're all available. You just got to join Howl for like $8 or whatever it is. But to get to your other thing, you're monetizing and metrics. The only metrics, and also jealousy. So the only metrics that we have.
Jealousy for me is my main kind of.
Yeah, I was crazy. I'm crazy.
Yeah, I think so. But
Yeah.
look, I'm imagining myself having been a pioneer in something in 2009, and then all these people I've interviewed now have their own show. I feel like it would irk me a bit. But again, depending on where my own self-esteem was that day, maybe I'd be happy for them, maybe I wouldn't. But I do want to tell you
That
specifically.
was certainly not the case.
What was not the case?
The being happy for somebody is
Is
never the
rarely
first.
an option. Yeah.
Lately, it has been like my life has changed enough, and certain things have happened around my self-esteem because of accomplishments that
Yes.
enable me to be that way now. but not then.
Right. And so I basically want to tell you why I have one, because you're largely to credit for why I started one, because I've done a bunch of movies. I've done a few TV shows, and people, they tell me what they think of those things when I'm out in the world. And those interactions are never really what I want them to be for whatever reason. Either I think, they just recognize me. They don't know what else to say. So they got to say, I love blank, right? Because they're in an awkward situation. Or if my self-esteem's really high and they say that was great, I think great, but I know that's not going to fill up the hole. So it doesn't matter, right? The point is, of all the things I've done, the way people have talked to me about my interview on your show has been really profound. It's made me feel wonderful in a way that no response to anything I've ever done really has.
Wow.
I'd say your show and Sam Jones. And both of those were like, his is an hour-long format. I don't know how long you and I talked, but I've had people say to me like, oh, man, I'll check in with that episode like every few weeks. Like your story really,
right? And
I go, holy shit, that means a ton to me, because someone didn't write that for me. I wasn't a great director, or it's not I didn't benefit from a super well choreographed anything. It's just who I am, and wow, that affected somebody. That makes me feel really fucking good, more than any of the other stuff does. And I thought, fuck that, I like that. That feels nice. I would like to do that more. And it's really because of you. So at one time I could see where if I were you, I'd be like, awesome, dude. You started the 1,000,000th podcast, but I just want you to know why I would want to do what you do, because it is important.
Yeah, I'm very flattered, and I'm glad that you had that experience.
Your show has this huge reach, which I don't have to tell you about, but there are different things where you do them and then they surprise you, their reach. One of them is Stern. Like when I did Stern, I'm like, holy fuck, so many people listen to Stern. Or I'm at least judging that based on like Twitter response and stuff, right? And then
people have been with him for years.
Every day, their whole life. Some people, and then your show is very similar to that, because if people they listen to it, it's not like they listen to it as they would watch a TV show, right? 2 and a Half Men. This is like a part of their identity in some weird way.
That's true for some people, yeah,
and that's really cool. And they're in a relationship with you,
yes,
and they don't have to be entertained per se. They don't have to be, there's all this. They're just in a relationship with you, and they enjoy the relationship.
Right.
And it's very unique and cool.
It's wild. Yeah, it took a long time to sort of realize that. But, when people come up to me, they're like, I know you really well. But you don't know me at all.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's true. I'm sorry. But I hope you're having a good relationship with me.
Yeah. And wow, I hadn't even thought of that element, but I'll say that when people knew me from movies, there was a big separation.
Right.
And then when people knew me from Parenthood, I was in their living room, and I actually could feel that what people talk about is like, oh, if you're in people's living room once a week, they do feel like they know you even more. And then, of course,
that character.
Yes.
My girlfriend's a big fan of Parenthood. Is there one of her things she watched?
Who's your girlfriend right now?
Sarah Kane. She's a painter.
The painter. Yeah.
But the jealousy thing for me was that, a lot of the guys that that have the big podcast now, they did come after me around the same time. Mm-hmm. Like, Hardwick and Rogan, was a little after me. I think they were both a little after me, really.
Right.
And then there were a lot of people that came. It's just, and
Hardwick's though is so genuine. Don't you agree? At least it clearly, it reeks of like a genuine interest in the thing he's talking about.
I guess, I've always had a problem. We've had problems over the years. Mm-hmm. I've had problems with all of them over the years.
Yeah.
In my own mind.
Sure.
But I had them on. I try to reconcile it. And,
well, he told me the other day that you were instrumental in him getting sober.
That's right.
No matter what thing you do or don't have with him.
That's right. Yeah, I did. He ultimately.
You were the first person I think he
talked to, right? Yeah. I remember when he was pudgy and sweaty and drunk at Galifianakis'
I
house
knew him there
in Venice. Yeah, I think that's when it happened.
Yeah,
where he was just like, and look, he's all right. It just I found it to be. I told him to his face. I said, I think what are you trying to be, the nerd Ryan Seacrest? He's like, I would love to be Ryan Seacrest. And that's what he's doing. He's a good broadcaster. He's a good personality.
Yeah.
He is broad enough that his appeal is vast.
He also seems to have the unique gift of being able to juggle a million things at once. Like, he has so much. I have to be singular.
I can't even answer an email from you. I don't even have I can't even manage my email account.
Yeah. So I have to be so singular focused on something, or I just don't do a very good job at it. I'm impressed with his ability to.
He knows how to deliberate power. You know, like he
delegate, right?
That's it.
He trusts people. I didn't mean to say that to correct you. I think
that's right. I do that. I use the wrong words all the time.
I don't do that well. Do you delegate?
No, I don't. And me and my partner Brendan, we don't. And we didn't build a network. We're not part of a network. Yeah. You know, we run our own shop. You know, because we're very control freaky about the quality of what we're doing.
Yes.
You know, but I don't know that you necessarily become rich like that.
Right.
In the way that Chris wanted to be rich. Like, if you want to be rich.
How important is being rich to you?
Well, it's not. I mean, I'm glad I'm making money, and I'm glad, that things worked out for me.
Yeah.
And that, I'm making a healthy living. But it was never.
It's not an obsession of yours.
No.
You don't suffer from fear of economic insecurity.
I do suffer from that.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I want to be rich. Okay. I just want to be economically secure.
Yeah, but what does that mean? I mean, I guess that.
Well, I don't want to worry about money.
Yeah,
but I don't need $100 million.
Right. You don't lay in bed going, "Fuck, I got to get this number. If I get this number,
never.
I'll be safe."
No, well, there's that, but it's not that big a number.
Okay.
But like somebody,
Louis seems to have a similar relationship with money, or at least if I'm to believe him on Stern, which is he doesn't worry about it, doesn't think about it, doesn't care about it. Yes,
but he spends it. He needs to spend money to make it. Like he used to, when he makes bad financial decisions, it forces him to work.
Right.
He's one of those guys. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to lose everything to force my hand on generating something new.
He also has probably the unique ability to just go out on the road at any given moment.
Not right now.
Yeah. He had, I should have said, he had the unique ability to at any point go, fuck it, I'm just going to go do 12 dates or whatever.
That's right. Yeah. I don't, we haven't been talking. I've reached out. I don't know how he's feeling about things, but yeah, before the shit hit the fan with him, he could do that. Like, if he was in a pinch. Yeah.
That's kind of a superpower.
It's good if you have a following. That's about an audience. But the jealousy thing, well, Chris obviously had a plan to take over the world. Chris Hardwick wanted to be, have an empire, and also an assets that he could sell. Mm-hmm. That was the plan. I know other people, entrepreneurial people, that are like that.
Are you judgmental of that plan, or are you like, that's a fine plan to have?
No, it's fine with me. My problems with him were ultimately around like, are you a comic?
Right.
And do you give a shit? What are you creating? Is this just a brand? Who are you in there?
Yeah.
But ultimately,
this seems to be. I want to interrupt you. This seems to be a theme within stand-ups, right?
So okay.
It feels exclusionary to me, right? Because I did sketch comedy, but that wouldn't be a comedian in your book, right?
No, but that's not the point. You're not doing comedy. You're not going up there being a stand-up. Like I wouldn't judge you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I knew Hardwick when he was like, sort of like drunky, broy, host on MTV.
Right. Yeah.
Like he came to stand up later. Mm-hmm. But by this point he's certainly paid his dues and he's got an audience and he can do it.
Yeah.
But there was always something within me like when I was younger, it was like stand-ups, they happen a certain way. We pay our dues a certain way.
That's what I'm wondering. Is it that you like? Is it because there's so much suffering in doing stand-up from the beginning, however long you do it. There's just a lot of fucking pain and suffering, right? If you become
some people, that's what I learned after doing the show. You can't generalize, and a lot of great comic minds are not fucked up.
Yeah,
a lot. There's a lot of people that are very talented.
There's two. Yeah, Will Ferrell and someone else.
But I mean, people come from a lot of different places. I've loosened my bitterness and judgment around.
But even if it was true or not true, if your experience was a tremendous amount of pain and suffering, and
it was just paying your dues. It wasn't about pain and suffering. That there was a way to be a comic, and now it doesn't exist. That training does not exist in the same way.
Right. But I'm not a musician, so I can certainly understand if you're a musician and you watch American Idol, you go, this is bullshit. This is like you're taking a shortcut, right? But you could also lose sight of the fact that Well, Kelly Clarkson's still a fucking amazing singer, right? Like, so, at the end of the day, I guess what I'm curious about is that I don't think you see in like, I don't know what occupation where as other people enter it or get known for it, they're mad that other people have entered this. So for Chris, he has the label of a comedian, and that doesn't feel earned.
It did for a while, but like I think what he is a host. Which is a comedian's job. It's one of the jobs available to comedians. But I think he's always been a host. Right. And the comedy thing was good. Got him some chops. He can go out and tour a little bit, tell his nerd stories. But I think that his job
tell his nerd stories
in show business is a host, and he's fine with that job. Yeah. Whether it's a game show host or a talk show host, he's a host guy.
Now, when you were doing stand-up and you were looking at other stand-ups, the trajectory used to be, right, in the 90s is if you were a breakout stand-up, you then got a sitcom.
You got a deal. That was the model for a while based on, a few people back in the day, Roseanne and everything. There was a model where you could just buy a comic with a point of view. Yeah. Give him a deal and then get a writer with him. And, let's see if we can get it up and going.
And was that a path that you saw yourself on?
It was just something that you expected. You work hard enough. So like, where's my deal? I got a deal back then, and I wrote it out for a couple of scripts that never went to pilot. I had a small deal or two coming up. I had all those opportunities that never went anywhere.
Right.
The podcast is what, got me everything that I have. And that's something I did on my own, but some guys, were like, fuck the deals or whatever.
Well, the whole reason I'm asking you is that I got in full honesty, I was blown away with how good you are on Glow. Like sincerely, our friend Jackie's on the show. So we were compelled to check it out. And as we're checking it out to watch Jackie, I'm going, fucking Maron it's such a bullseye. You're so good at it. And I think an outsider who doesn't know about it would go, oh, he's just being himself, which as someone who's been doing this for 25 years, it's the fucking hardest thing in the world to do yourself weirdly. It takes the utmost confidence because none of us think we're interesting enough to just be, right?
Well, I think that with Sam Sylvia, having done 4 seasons of my own show and that came because of the podcast. It got me the following. It got me, stand-up attention. It got me the TV show, The Last Book. So ultimately, on some level, not so much Glow, but like I'd always wanted to do that. But I think knowing
they just offered that to you, though. I assume. Oh, you read for it?
They didn't know what they wanted, and I wasn't really looking. I just finished my show, but I wanted to do some acting, and they sent me a script. My manager did, and I'm like, I can do this guy, and I put it on. We videoed it.
Right.
I did. I put some glasses on, self-taped. I put a Lacoste shirt on, some aviator glasses. And I read with my personal trainer lady who wants to be an actress.
Oh, good.
And
because it would be something if she had zero interest in reading.
No, she did it. And they cast me. Genji liked me. I don't think the showrunners were initially sold from what I understand, but Genji, who was producing it, Genji Kohan, was like, that's your guy. So, but with that guy, that parts of that guy live in me, and, and also that guy gives me license, to maybe like, exploring, sexism and sort of being a bully and, but also being, fundamentally insecure and someone whose life isn't working out for.
Right.
Well, so I could identify with that, but I make certain choices in that character that are not me. Like I think in this,
but you just mentioned it. You have some cover fire of it being set in the 80s, right?
Sure.
Like you can, as you say, you can be more sexist. You can.
Well, no, it's written that way.
Yeah. But isn't that liberating in a weird way? Cause I think, do you like myself? You kind of, in a weird way, you lament that basically any kind of racial observations are off the table now. Any kind of female male observations, like comedy has been stifled a bit lately, right?
You got to push through, Like I think that this right now, it's volatile, but there's going to be a balance. It's going to what's happening is righteous, but like ultimately, we can't walk around, completely self-censoring.
Right.
And like how it shakes out culturally with men and women, that's always an ongoing project. But for me to be able to do that guy, but then to find a heart in that guy, and to find a kindred spirit in Allison's character. Like I just, I've talked to a lot of actors. I've played myself. I know I learned how to be on camera and stuff. So that stuff was a great education.
You, through the hundreds of hours you've done of the podcast, and you've gotten a response that says you are interesting. You are
right.
You have a quality that's worth paying attention to. Do you think that gave you a confidence acting?
Well, oddly, I was very nervous at the beginning of my own show, but walking onto Glow, I knew like this isn't on my shoulders. I'm not producing. I'm not writing. I got to put this guy's pants on and find out, who he is. Which is oddly, you put the pants on, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You shave my soul patch off, put the glasses on, got my hair going, and I read the script, and so I wasn't that nervous. Maybe the first day or two.
Yeah.
But like you go scene for scene, you compartmentalize. Like I'm able to memorize lines. Like I can do that. I was doing my show, I was in every scene and I was writing it.
Yeah.
So like, and we didn't have a budget and we were shooting, you were doing 8 to 15
But it's
page
way
days.
easier to memorize your own writing, isn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't really my writing. I had a writer's room.
Oh, okay.
But every scene. So like I just got into a system of like, after a certain point, you can't do the night before shit because you can familiarize yourself with what's going to happen. I can know the story and read the lines. And maybe if you got a big speech or something, maybe try to get that in your head. But ultimately, you're going to do it when you're there and you're with your co-stars. And you're like, let's run this, let's run it. And then, you're going to do several different angles of coverage and you can work it that way.
Yeah.
But like, for me, like it's more get a sense of it, look at it, read it out loud, memorize if you can, but be in it the day
but
of.
it is liberating, isn't it? Because I went from doing a couple year long bit of work where I was only acting in what I had written and directed, right?
Yeah.
And then I, for the first time last year, did another person's movie, and I got there, and I was like, oh, right, this is fun. I get to just concentrate on this moment,
right?
And that's really fun and liberating. Like there was an airiness to
I'm learning
to that.
Yeah, like there is the element with
let
me.
the other person worry about the full story that's being told.
Right.
And I just got to be honest about this moment, and they'll tell me if that doesn't work in the full story.
Exactly.
That's nice.
That's
right?
a way to look. That's a good way to look at it. And I started to look at that more that way in the second season. But for me, like it's like, oh fuck, I've been here 3 hours, and
yeah.
But like I'm not complaining. But there's a lot of things I do, and there's some part of acting when you're there for the day and you're shooting one scene, and your downtime is like 5 or 6 hours.
It's rough.
Where you're like, sort of, I could have been doing
It's my number one trigger, which is I hate being a part of a bad plan. Like if I'm at a friend's house and they want to move a couch through a fucking doorway, and I can see that the person calling out which way to tilt it is doing it. I find it insufferable. I just can't be a part of a terrible plan. And quite often on a set, you're a part of this really poorly laid plan.
And to their credit, like I didn't live far from set. So like there were times where I'm like, how long it's going to be 3 hours, you think? Like the AD would tell me, and I'd be like, I'm going to go home.
Yeah.
And they'd let me. No, it wasn't. It was just me adjusting to a lot of being on a set is waiting. And, and how do you spend that time? But like, I generally sit on set. I watch the other people work. I'll fucking, I'll read a bit. I'll look at my phone.
And are you kind of revered there? Is it like a fun thing for you to be the older member of the cast? And a lot of
I don't know.
You don't think
the girls
so?
have got a lot to do. The women have, they're wrestling, and they're like everybody's sort of doing their work. That's what's amazing about it. I mean, there's like 13, 14 women there, just in the cast, and they're working. Where everyone's working.
Yeah.
We socialize and stuff, but it's intense, and their jobs are a little more intense. But I was just happy that. Like this second season, like there were times where I'm like, am I doing the guy or am I just being me? Like,
So can I just tell you, I remember coming home in season 2 of Parenthood, and I said to Kristen, I don't know if I've gotten lazy or something. Like I feel like I'm not putting in the work.
Right.
I just had this weird pang of guilt that it was too easy.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh no, hon, that's what being on a TV show is. It gets progressively easier every year because you just know the character so well. You don't even have to really think about it. And she was right. I got better as an actor on it, but I was doing less and less and less. But it was a weird thing.
Oh, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, like
that's helpful.
you're most certainly, if you have that feeling, you're getting better at the role.
Oh, good.
And by however many, I hope for you, a dozen seasons, it just gets easier and easier. And,
Yeah.
and for us, like 6th year, I was like, I could read a scene in the makeup trailer 5 minutes before we shot, and it'd be better than when I had worked on shit for 2 days.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild,
Yeah.
right? And then you can also that muscle, you can memorize shit way fast, or at least I could. All of a sudden, you could hand me a scene, I could do it 10 minutes.
That's
later.
right. I don't think everybody can do that, but I mean, it's a good thing to be able to do.
I really assume everyone can do it because I was so bad at memorizing when I started the show, and I had all this anxiety about it. And Kristen goes, "No, honey, it's gonna get really easy for you." And I'm like, "No, but I'm dyslexic, and it won't be that way for me." And it was
Yeah.
exactly that way for me. And I think
Right.
that was generally.
Huh. But here's what I want to tell you about jealousy. Is that like it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Ultimately, over time, once all of us sort of figured out how to make our shows our own and make a living at it, or make some money, or do whatever the hell we were doing, I became less obsessed with other people. I just do the job.
I want to know, because you've had a fucking pretty awesome last few years, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we're as similar as I think we are, you tell yourself all growing up, like, if I have this, I'm going to feel this way. If I have this amount of money, I'll feel this way. If I have this amount of success, I'll feel this way. I'll like myself. My self-esteem will be good. You said something earlier that goes contrary to my experience, which is, it sounds like the success has healed some stuff for you. Do you think that's accurate?
Definitely.
It has.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because my experience is, okay, I got this stuff I wanted. I feel the same exact way about myself.
Huh.
And then the things I've discovered that give me self-esteem are not related at all to the things I thought would give me self-esteem.
Well, some
And
things,
I'm
I understand that.
I'm shocked to hear that yours is different.
I don't know if it's different. I think that the things that you probably find and give you self-esteem, I could probably use more of, because the fundamental insecurities or tapes that I tell myself around, how I look, or whether I'm funny, and that's tempered a little bit. Like the thing that's happened for me, because most of my career is self-designed, whether it be stand-up or the podcast or the show, is that I can see very clearly that I've gotten better at all of them. Which means that I've worked hard, and I can now see that I can do things. Like I know the limitations of my talent, but I also know where I can push it a little harder. And I'm okay with that. I have a certain amount of self-acceptance around my shortcomings, right?
Yeah.
So,
And by the way, that's an esteemable act. Getting better at something, improving on something, working hard at something, that is something that can improve your self-esteem.
that's right.
But going to the SAG Awards and I don't know, Billy Bob Thornton just says hi to you.
For me, there was a period there during the show where people would say your show, and be like, but I do stand up too. Like the podcast was like this default, but then it became something I was very good at, and then became respected at it. If for some reason I had a knack for talking to people in a certain way that was uniquely mine. And so I started to accept that. So now I accept, I don't ask people when they say, I like your show. I'm like, which? Do you
what was your favorite? What one did you like?
My TV show Glow, the podcast. What do you like? Because I want to know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I'll just say thank you.
Yeah.
And then if the conversation continues, usually I can figure it out. But what ultimately, has happened is that, my partner and I, we were not entrepreneurs. We did not set out to make money. We had no idea. He was probably going to be a career guy, in satellite radio or news television of some sort. And, I was going to bounce around for however long in B rooms or whatever. So the fact that we got into this medium early enough to where it was nebulous. People didn't know, how do you make money and not lose listeners? How do we do this? I mean, I was packing envelopes, sending swag packets to people that donated, on PayPal in the first year or two.
Yeah.
So we evolved with the business, and we built a business, and we run a business. And, I'm very proud of him. And, he came full time with me a few years ago, he was working. He couldn't even say he was producing my show, because he was doing it, on his own time, working on MSNBC shows, doing he
was moonlighting on your show.
Right. And the fact that when he said, I'm going to come on, I'm like, you know what? Don't, I can go down, but you got a kid.
Yeah, it's
I don't want you
scary.
going down with me.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not, I did the research, don't
We'll
worry
be
about
fine.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that he bought his first house, and, and I, and I'm part of that, that's esteemable to me, that we built this thing together, with not knowing anything in a new medium.
Yeah.
And then like the fact that like, I don't get scared. I'm not scared of stand up anymore. I'm not scared of acting anymore. I do get scared when I have to talk to people, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Cause you
That
don't know
might be
how it's
good.
going to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that stuff.
But the part of your story that I do think is people could glean something from or take as advice, which you would never give. But I just reading about you last night, I saw in you someone that you put a million fucking pokers in the fire. Like you tried a million different things and you stayed active, and you were obviously, it's obvious now, you were open to whatever way the river was flowing ultimately, right? Like, so you had an idea of who you were going to be. I don't know who that was, fucking Richard Pryor or something. And then somehow, but you stayed busy. You did a bunch of things. You're doing radio. You started a podcast. And then you're open to the fact that you might be great at something you didn't pick for yourself.
Well, I'd like to it have been as pleasantly framed as you're framing it, but like what happened to me is that I wanted to be a comedian.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a great comedian, and I'm a pretty great comedian. But the fact was that when the podcast happened, I had to fully accept in my heart, because if I didn't, I would be delusional that I probably wasn't going to be on a TV show. I probably wasn't going to be a great comedian. Like I wasn't going to sell the tickets. That like I'd hit a wall, and and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be a no-name comic doing B rooms for the rest of my life. I'd rather die.
Yeah.
So like I had to let a lot of shit go.
Well, it's all identity shit, right? You had an identity. You had this.
I worked towards it though, but
Yeah.
it was work, and it didn't work. It didn't work. I've been doing comedy for 15, 20 years at that point, and it didn't work.
But that takes strength, and that's something that I hope people will kind of think about. Is like, okay, well, I have picked this identity for myself, and but I would encourage people to be a little fluid about that and be a little open to that. Maybe we're not the best at picking our identity.
That's right. But my flexibility was always, it was like I was always kind of like beaten. Like it was never like.
Right.
Like
you weren't on top going, okay, and now I'm going to try this.
No.
that's
Like I did
fine.
radio because like I had nothing going on.
Yeah.
And when
But one thing that's obvious about you is you have a crazy fucking drive. I don't know. Your
Right.
dad was a surgeon, right? So
Yeah.
you're type A in some
Yeah.
capacity, probably.
Yeah.
But you have this incredible drive. You're indomitable, right? You've had your ass kicked a trillion fucking times, and then you keep starting over.
Yeah, but like because like the weird thing is that for someone who doesn't think about money, when someone is taking all your money, and you're like there really does become this weird kind of grown up moment where you're like, how the fuck am I going to survive? What am I going to do? Like I'm 40, whatever I was when I started the podcast. Like I'm not going to try to write on someone's show. If I can't, I really don't want to just like spend my life on the road, not being known.
Yeah.
Like there's, and the weird thing is like I had powerful representation to some degree, but we had a lot of shots.
Yeah.
And, and I'd seen when you're in this business, you see it go badly for people.
Oh, sure.
You see people
more often than it goes
disappear.
well for people.
Like, so all this
but
was
to me,
compounded.
I see when I've witnessed that a bunch of times on my short ride, and what I generally see is kind of just a lack of flexibility. Like they were not able to.
They might not have been able. They might not have the
deviate.
talent to it. Who the hell knows? Whether someone's stubborn or they just can't do the other thing. I mean, like I was fortunate enough that I don't know what it was, Dax, but yeah, flexibility. It was out of necessity.
Yeah.
But like if you're encouraging people to do that without it being desperate, great, give it a try.
Yeah,
but the
yeah.
funny thing is that pride, leading the parade, so to speak, in determining what you see yourself as, even when it's not happening in any way, can completely delude you.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh yeah.
so like, and you're still fighting a war.
It's like
that-
putting a welding mask on. You just can't see anything.
and everyone else
clearly.
sees it.
Yeah, it's very obvious to everyone else.
Look at that guy. He's got no clothes on.
My I promise last question is: can you be a victim of your own comedic persona? And I'm gonna
That's very funny.
because
So it's point of view.
it is point of view, but here's why. What specifically? What did you ever see that Bobby Fischer documentary on HBO
I don't
about
think so.
the chess champion?
Yeah.
So he was a grandmaster and he was a
Right.
champion, and then eventually he became paranoid, right? Like clinical paranoid. And he's gone batshit crazy. I think he lives in Iceland and he's an anti-Semitic now and all this crazy stuff. But in that documentary, they said all these past grandmasters have become paranoids. The reason being is all day long they sit there and they forecast doom, right? If I move here, he's going to move here, right? And so the part of the brain they're using 8 hours a day is getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and then they can't unwire their brain. Now they're always forecasting doom everywhere they go, at Rite Aid, no matter where they're at.
But they also need to structure the world in a way that they have some control over. Like, I think that paranoia, it creates its own dogma. Like, like you create a system that makes you believe you understand how the world works.
Yeah.
And that's what chess is.
Do you play chess?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't fucking do that.
But the reason I was thinking of it is, so I've done Leno's like car show a couple times. I've been on his show, right? And I've been to his garage, Jay Leno. And he told me at one point, like, I said, "Where's your wife? How's she doing?" He said, "Oh, she's on a vacation, I go, "Do you ever go with her on vacation?" Yeah, he goes, "I don't go on vacation. I got to work," right? And so that is his persona, is that he's blue collar and he works a lot. And I get it. It's very successful for him. But then at a certain point, I'm pulling back going, yeah, but you should go on vacation and you should swim in your pool. You can very easily become a victim of your own persona.
Oh, yeah.
And yours is a little bit grumpy, right? Your persona.
Yeah.
And then I just wonder how you keep that in check.
No, I'm fighting it. Like, I don't really want to be grumpy. And like,
And do you have a fear that if you transition into like a very happy, grateful person,
it's
all
not a
this good
fear.
stuff's happening?
I think that, like, a lot of those things aren't really conscious. Is that, you've got a way of being that, is sort of home base for you for most of your life.
Uh-huh.
So like, it's a little harder it's hard to just decide not to do that anymore. But the flexibility thing, I think,
I'd have no awareness of it if I hadn't lived with Kristen in the last 10 years and I watched someone doing virtually the opposite of what I do in every situation.
Yeah, my girlfriend checks me like that.
Yeah, and then getting these rewards that I was searching for, right?
I get very obsessed with dumb shit. Like, I just bought a new house and it's really like, I waited a long time. I've lived in that same house that I lived in. The only house I ever bought was that one where the podcast started.
Yeah.
And I finally just sort of like, fuck it. I got no wife. I got no kids. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to buy, get a new house, you idiot. Live life. And I love the new house.
Uh-huh.
But like, I'm still a little hung up on it.
Is there
like,
a little voice, going, "This is dangerous"?
No, the voice is like, how much do I got to pay to have this place cleaned every week?
Oh, right.
Can I afford this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever think of myself as somebody who earns money. Or that's going to keep earning money.
Yo.
So, so that makes me nervous, but I get over that. But then I get obsessed with like, did I get the right chair? Is this the right chair? That could go on for months. Why'd I get that fucking chair?
Right.
So,
right. It's very stressful. These chairs we select, they can bring you down.
Yeah.
Well, I love you, Marc Maron, and I'm really glad that we navigated that texting exchange. And again, I'm going to give all credit to you. You were very sober in your response, and you're applying it to all your affairs.
Well,
I applaud that.
I'm trying, and I appreciate it. I love you too. And I when I wrote that response, I'm like, he's a sober guy. I'm going sober. I'm gonna go straight. I take responsibility. How can we?
Yeah, you should have almost put like number 9 next to it.
Well, that would have been condescending.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, or maybe it'd be 10. It'd be 10. You'd put 10 next to it. But anyways, I really, and the fact that you came so quickly after that exchange.
I was panicked.
And
like, I better get over there.
And
I actually had anxiety. Like, what if I forget? And then it'll just be worse. And Dax will feel worse. And like, Kristen will never do the show. And they're both going to hate me. Like, and I was in traffic. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be late. Oh my God. This is going to.
What will America's lovebirds do in retribution? Well, I swear to you here publicly that I'm going to personally drive her to your house to do your podcast.
All right, good.
All right.
And then what, are you just going to hang out?
I'm going to jerk off in the car.
You can do it in my empty house.
Stay tuned if you'd like to hear my good friend and producer Monica Padman point out the many errors in the podcast you just heard. Monica Padman,
Dax Shepard.
Marc Maron, what happened?
So this is kind of a weird fact check, but I'm going to do it.
Okay.
When you're talking about your text exchange.
He and I's.
Yep.
Yeah. You went into my phone without my knowledge?
No, but sort of. I know the details of this conversation because I was involved because you included me in.
Oh, right. I sent you like a screen grab or
Yes.
something. Yeah.
So Mark said you waited until the next day to respond. And you said, no, it was that night because we had gone to dinner and then we had watched Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
And then you responded. So it must have been 3 hours later. That's what you said. But he is right. And you're wrong.
really?
Yes, because it was Saturday that this exchange happened, this text exchange.
Okay.
Sunday is when we all went to dinner and we all watched Peaky Blinders. Saturday, you guys had this exchange after, during, I don't know, Ellen's birthday party.
Okay.
And then it must have been after on when you got home, and then you fell asleep, and then you responded the next morning.
I did.
You did.
Okay. Continue on.
You also
Continue
sent
on.
me-
I'm just gonna. Now I gotta fact check your fact check.
Okay, you can. I have it in my phone too because you sent them to me.
Okay. Well, don't out me for sending you. By the way,
Why?
anyone who ever texts me, I screen grab it and I send it directly to Monica.
I only said that because you said that in the episode.
Yes. Okay.
You said I
So,
sent it to Mark.
okay. So I'm just gonna see. So the text was sent Tuesday, November 29th to. Oh, that's 2016. That's not it. Okay. Oh, okay. So Saturday, February 10th, 2018, he sent me a text at 7:17 p.m. I responded at 11:15 p.m. 4 hours later.
Yeah,
Not the next day.
But you responded with your
Antagonistic.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's talking about when you then said, when you came back around, you waited until the next day to do that. And you did. You waited until the morning.
Mm, yeah. Yep. You're right. Yeah. Cause I sent him one at 11:19.
That was edgy.
That was no, you're not shit. But can you imagine my point of view, how that feels? Yeah. Right. So it's kind of neutral. I was being vulnerable. Can you imagine that? I
Right.
feel bad. That was at 11:19. And then he responded at 11:25. And I was at that point, I had shut my phone
Asleep.
off.
Yeah, that's what I
You're right.
figured.
You're right. And then at 8:52 in the morning, I wrote, first of all, you're working the shit out of the program. Thank you for the apology. I would love to have you on my podcast, and I'm sure she would love to be on yours. I think we can all be happy. Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I think I might have been confused about no response period. I thought he was saying I did not respond at all to his first text until the next day, which that's where my confusion is.
Got it.
Okay. Whew.
He couldn't find the name for the women's basketball team, or he couldn't remember the
The
name.
LA Galaxy.
No, the California Golden Bears.
I feel like these names are so insulting. I don't know if I said any of this when Maron and I were talking, but I just feel like they're a little bit patronizing, these names for the WNBA.
women?
Yeah, because it was like the Sparkles and the
Golden. Yeah, why do they have to be Golden Bears?
The Golden Bears is the fucking mascot for a Sugar Crisp,
Why
right?
can't
Or
it be-
something. Super Sugar Crisp.
Why can't it just be bears?
Yeah, the
you're
Golden
right.
Bears.
You're right. I don't love it. He talks about smoking salvia, and he's right. It is salvia.
Mm.
It's a plant species that has transient psychoactive properties.
Do you recommend this drug?
I can't recommend it as
Okay.
I've never done any of them.
I've never done that either. People should know this about you and I, is we have a long-standing debate. I desperately want you to try ecstasy before you die and mushrooms.
Yeah.
I don't think you should leave planet Earth before. And again,
Yep.
this advice is only to Monica. I know her. She's a responsible person. She
Yes.
has no addictive qualities. I'm not prescribing this to everyone, but I will say, Monica Padman, if you leave this fucking planet without dancing on MDMA and holding someone's hand and kissing, it's a fucking tragedy for you.
Yeah, but-
everyone else can make their own decision.
But for me, I don't think it would be a tragedy.
I know, that's
and
where
I
you're
have
wrong.
I
I apologize, Mr. and Mrs. Padman, but I am holding firm on this. There's also data that doing mushrooms increases your long-term creativity.
Yeah.
There's pretty good support of that now. And I think you need to take a walk through the woods with some friends. And
I know a lot
and
of people
mushrooms.
who've done mushrooms who I don't find to be super creative or
I
interesting.
did not say it could make all people creative, but it can improve your own personal potential for creativity.
Yeah.
So whatever yours already is, we just add 10% to it or 5% or whatever.
Sure.
What would be great, though, is if I eventually wear you down and you do it, and then you can report on it here on the podcast.
I could.
Okay, continue.
Mark said he knew Chris Hardwick when he was a host on MTV, and I didn't know he was a host on MTV,
Mhm.
and he was on Singled Out.
Yep.
Singled Out, a dating
With Jenny
show.
McCarthy, was she also the other host?
Yes, she
Who's
was
Melissa
the other.
McCarthy's cousin.
Yep, exactly. And it was about 50 men and 50 women, and they were competing for a date with one main contestant of the opposite sex.
Mm,
And
cool.
yeah, and I had no idea. So he started hosting kind of early on.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Well, he's cute. If you're comedic
So
and cute, it's kind of a layup to be a host on MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You think he's very cute. Can we add that? Chris
Yeah.
Hardwick. Yeah, you thought he.
We had him on the podcast.
Yes, and when he left, Monica was short of breath.
I was pretty enamored by him. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was great. I liked witnessing that.
Well, this is turning into me getting embarrassed, and I might
Yeah,
cry.
that's the goal.
'cause I do that. But he's so smart.
Chris Hardwick.
Yes.
Yeah, we're very off Marc Maron topic.
Oh,
now.
sorry.
Yes, he's incredibly
he
smart.
He deserves a little love on this podcast.
Yeah, because Mark wasn't
Let's
as
balance it.
kind as he could have been.
Yeah.
But I think that's Mark's persona.
And it's his opinion and his experience with him.
Yeah.
Just because ours is different or yours is different. Anyway.
Mhm. I love Chris Hardwick.
Me too.
He's awesome.
I liked him very much. You talk about the Bobby Fischer documentary on HBO.
I hope to God I'm right about this because I tell that same story
do.
all the time. And if I'm wrong, this is going to be a big bummer for me.
I don't think you're wrong. It's confusing because it's nowhere to be found on HBO now.
Okay.
And
Great.
HBO stockpiles their stuff. So, like, if you go on HBO Go, you can find all of their things.
Well, the ones that they produced. So there's
Yeah.
a few documentaries I've seen on there that I've recommended to people that vanished from there. Like Hot Coffee was one I loved that I saw on HBO, and it's not on there anymore. And it's about tort reform. It's phenomenal.
because you just witnessed this on HBO.
Yeah, it aired on HBO, but I don't know that
Okay.
it was their original documentary that they owned
Don't
it outright.
think it was because
Yeah.
it's not there anymore, and I couldn't find very much information on the documentary. Anyway, it's called Bobby Fischer Against the World.
That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
because
very
he's
hard-
gone. He's gone berserk.
He's dead. That's part of this.
Oh, he's dead.
yeah, that's part of this.
He
fact
was living
check.
in Iceland, though, right?
He was living, maybe in Iceland, definitely in some far away
Some
isolated
northern,
area.
in the Arctic Circle.
He died in 2008. He died 10 years ago.
Oh, geez, I'm not up to date on him.
He's no longer present.
He's not with us. He
Tense.
passed, as they say. How did he die?
Bobby Fischer died of kidney failure.
Okay,
Unrelated.
to his paranoia.
Yeah.
All right.
Unless maybe he was so paranoid he stopped drinking water.
Or exactly. He thought the only thing safe you could eat was lead. Or
Yep.
something crazy. I
Yep.
don't even know what
Could
gives
be.
you renal failure, but
Yeah, he lived in Iceland, and he did have clinical paranoia, and he was an anti-Semite at the end of his life.
yeah.
And then you said all grandmasters have paranoia, and they don't all. A couple.
Did I say all?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I said it's common, but you're probably right.
I hope you said
no,
all.
I bet you're right.
I think you said all.
It makes a better story when I say all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has more of an emphasis, which is why you said it. But it isn't true. Some of them do. A lot of them have had weird stuff, but they can't correlate it to chess. The big two, Bobby Fischer and Paul Morphy,
Oh, okay.
two big ones that were paranoid
Uh-huh.
and had some psychotic.
But how many
breaks.
grandmasters are there to begin with? So it's got to be a small pool. So even if 20%
Worldwide,
of them,
there's
how many?
58.
Jesus Christ.
Um,
Okay.
You mentioned at the end that Maron should have put a number 10 next to the text from the 12-step program. And so do you want to say what the number 10 is? 'Cause people don't know.
No, to go ahead and read it. I want the right verbiage. I'll miss a word.
Number 10 out of 12 in the 12 steps is continue to take personal inventory and when we are wrong,
promptly admitted it.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That was not super close for someone who's been reading those things for 13
You were
years.
yeah.
I should be really off book on all that. I just have condensed it to when we were wrong. We promptly admitted it, I think, is in my head what it's become.
Yeah.
Again, that's
Makes
why I'm
sense.
always very clear to say my understanding of this,
Yes.
because everyone's got their own. And that is the beauty. I just want to say one more, another plug for AA is it's one of the few social structures that has no hierarchy. There's no
Yeah.
one in charge. No one's allowed to say you're interpreting it correctly or incorrectly.
Mhm.
There's no brass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I wish I could go. I really do.
There are open meetings.
But
It says
don't you
in
have
the
to have
A-
it,
No.
an issue?
There are, if you look in the AA meeting guide, it'll say whether it's an opened or closed meeting. If it's closed, it means only alcoholics can attend. And if it's open, non-alcoholics can
Oh,
attend.
interesting.
Yeah, so there are open meetings.
Oh, I didn't know. So you guys were talking about, and you've mentioned this a few times throughout our tenure,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of life, if you're sort of doing it right, requires some flexibility of identity.
Uh-huh.
Like you have to be sort of flexible. And that just was reminding me because I think the best piece of advice I've ever gotten in my 12 years of life is love the thing that loves you back. Which is that, basically, when something's
love
like
the thing that
calling.
loves you back.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that a bunch.
Yeah.
That's similar to the song "Love the One You're With."
Yeah. That's all.
That was it.
Yeah.
All right. Good
Bye.
night.